I don't think that anyone would dispute that African and Arab cultures are different from European cultures. Problems arise when people in European cultures assume that the people from Arab and Muslim cultures have the same set of ethics, the same basic set of ethics as we have over here in Europe. And they don't. Their societies are based on a different set of ethics. When one of the Southport massacre survivors called Axel Rudikapana a coward, she was making an assumption that we have here in Europe, that when you fight somebody, you should pick on somebody your own size. That doesn't work in Africa, and it doesn't work in many traditional Muslim societies either. In fact, picking on someone your own size is, in those cultures, the height of stupidity. You pick on someone weaker than you. That way, you're certain to win, or more guaranteed to win than otherwise. That's a basic assumption that people in Europe just don't understand. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. So as not to be accused of taking one horrible example and applying it to everyone, I am now going to show you some pictures of Hamas operatives in Gaza after the ceasefire was declared. You may notice that they are all in uniform and waving guns around. And here, in the face of 3 young women, they're shouting Allahu Akbar and crowding into those girls just to intimidate them. And they're shouting Allahu Akbar loudly and proudly. But they weren't doing that when the Israeli soldiers were out on the streets. When the Israeli soldiers were out on the streets, they were in jeans and T-shirts pretending to be civilians and then shooting, sort of popping up from behind cover and shooting at the Israeli soldiers who didn't know whether they were shooting at civilians or not. And this is what we would in Europe define as cowardice, but not in that culture. Now, I'm not saying that every Arab is a coward, far from it. But there is a cultural tolerance of tricksterism in Muslim Arabian culture. I know most about Arabian culture, so I'll use that. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it goes into most Muslim influenced cultures as well. I want to tell you a story from the Sinbad cycle, for instance, that you might not have known about. There's one of Sinbad's adventures in which he marries a woman. He gets into a culture he doesn't know anything about, but it's a nice one and it's a rich one and he's living a good life, and he marries a local woman. And it's only after she dies that he realises they have a strange custom of which he had never previously heard. And that is, when a spouse dies, the other spouse is buried with the dead one. Not exactly buried. What they do is they lower the corpse of the dead spouse into a cave, and then they lower the surviving spouse into the same cave with that sort of bread and water, enough for a couple of days. And he finds himself, his wife dies, and he finds himself in that sort of a fix. And he's stuck in the cave with a jug of water and a bowl of barley or something, and there's nothing else. And then, as it turns out, just about when his rations have run out, another corpse comes down, this time the corpse of the husband of a woman, and then the woman is lowered down as well, the live woman, with the same rations that he had. What does Sinbad do? He creeps up behind the woman, brains her with a rock, and then uses her rations to survive a few more days. And this continues. He murders. I can't remember how many, maybe 4 or 5, before he realizes there is a way out. I think he sees a fox or something coming in. Anyway, he finds a way out of the cave, which is near the coast. But meanwhile, he has stolen the jewellery and personal effects that were on the bodies of the other people. Now, his rationale was that they would die anyway, so he was merely hastening their death. But there is an argument for that, of course. But he took the jewels and things that they had been sent down into the cave with, and he found a way out of the cave, and it was an isolated part of the coast, and eventually he was picked up by a ship, and he came home very rich. He gave alms to the poor out of the riches he'd brought back, and lived a good life until his next voyage. Many of his adventures involved tricking people who weren't quite as bright as him. And he was a hero. Now, you don't find that in European stories. There are people who trick demons and that sort of thing, but it's not quite to the same level as you find in the Arabian Nights stories. And these stories, by the way, were pre-Muslim, so you can't blame Islam for it all. It came out of a specific culture. You have to understand that the Arabian Peninsula, from where these stories emanate, the culture, it's a culture harsher than something on another planet. It really is survival of the fittest there, and would breed people who survive, and survive come what may. Whereas, for instance, in Arabian culture, in European culture, if another tribe moved in on your tribe and didn't massacre you, you got out the way, you could move further up the river or further down the river or further into the woods. You'd always find a source of water, and there would be enough wildlife of various sorts to provide you with some sort of a living. In the Arabian Peninsula, if you lost control of a well, you were dead. You were dead. It's actually, recorded in the Bible, isn't it, where Moses rescued the daughters of, I don't remember what tribe it was, I think he married one of them in the end. But he was in the desert, and there were these girls. They were drawing water from a well, and they were being raided by some other tribe, and he fought them off. Moses, that is. That's how important that sort of thing was. And that's where this culture comes from. And you have to understand what's lying behind this. So you get these people and they're all very brave here. And people like Rudukabana are very brave when they're fighting children. And the people in Boko Haram, they are fighting unarmed Christian villagers and stealing their daughters and then glorifying in it. There's nothing cowardly in that, because what's important is victory. And when you're choosing a fight, you don't choose a fight with someone bigger or the same size. You choose a fight with someone you're most likely to beat. And this is a basic assumption. And I don't know too much about African culture, but except that they were very determined, at least the ones I've read about, very determined slavers and empire builders within their own continent. And again, they seem to have this attitude that the biggest bully is the best person. So this is a cultural thing. And calling somebody like Rudukabana a coward would mean nothing to him. Absolutely nothing. And this is part of the problem of integration into our society. Until we have imbued people like Rudukabana or people like the Pakistani grooming gangs who were using the same techniques of you get a group and you bully weaker people in whichever way gives you the best gratification. Until we have imbued people like that with our values, that it is not ethical to get into gangs and bully weaker people, that this is not the way we do things, until we have done that, then we cannot rely on our society anymore to agree on basic assumptions. It's, of course, something that, I was going to say the Labour Party, but the Conservatives too, our governors, our governing elite, it's something they are not paying enough attention to. There's something they are ignoring. Everyone knows. We talk about grooming gangs, but if you notice the sort of groups of Muslims that gather, for instance, at Speaker's Corner to harass one or two Christian preachers, you'll see the same thing going on there. This idea of so long as you are in the majority, so long as you are in a gang of others, then you're right, because you're going to win. And when you win, that means you're right. And until we acknowledge this and try and do something about it, this cultural problem, this clash, this difference of opinion over what constitutes ethical behaviour, until we have acknowledged that, studied it and dealt with it, then our society is going to continue to have these sorts of problems, misunderstandings and eventual fragmentation, of course. Right, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.